There's an idea that myself and Daniel Priestley talk about, which is pitch the next step. And so if you're trying to raise money, for example, so say that you want to raise $1 million for your startup, if you kind of follow the Dragon's Den type approach or the Silicon Valley approach, which is you come up with a great deck and then you go and knock on 100 doors of venture capitalists and try and get them to invest in you. That approach actually isn't a particularly good approach in my experience. I've found all the money that I have raised has predominantly been from building relationships and building trusted relationships with people, finding out what they want, and then framing what I do in terms of helping them to get the outcome that they want. And so if there's somebody that I want to talk to, what I try and do is come up with a very small ask very early on to try and just start the relationship. So I probably get a dozen requests on LinkedIn for people wanting me to invest in their businesses, and they go straight from hi Callum to can I have $1 million? And that's a very big leap. And it's not like investors are sitting around with a checkbook going, well, I'm just waiting for the perfect pitch. That it doesn't work like that. You need to build some relationship first. So I'll give you a good example of a time when I had an opportunity to pitch someone important. So I had an opportunity to pitch Richard Branson, which this is ultimately what led to me on a tennis court with Richard Branson. So I was on Necker Island. There was a group of about 20 entrepreneurs. We're all on the island. And I had this opportunity. The next morning, I was going to be playing tennis with Richard Branson. And one of the things that I had noticed was that because he's a very, very successful entrepreneur and billionaire, everybody that met him, so I was with like 20 plus entrepreneurs, every time anyone got a chance to connect with Richard or they sat next to him, they would immediately start pitching him. And Richard is very well versed in this. He kind of smiles and nods and goes, oh, that's very interesting. But when I was watching him, I could see that he was sort of tuning out. He just gets pitched all the time. And I realized it must be incredibly draining just to when everyone knows that you're a billionaire, everyone's asking you for something. And actually what I also noticed was the only time I really saw him come alive was when he was with kids. And there was a few kids knocking around, and he loved playing with kids. And I could see that it was the only people that didn't want something from him. And anyway, so I had an opportunity to go and play tennis with him the next day, so basically have some one-on-one time with him. And all night I'm thinking, okay, what shall I do? Like, what can I do that will help me build a relationship with him, but isn't going to be pitching? And so what I did was, if you followed Richard Branson, you know, he's kind of a bit of a practical joker. He has these bets that he's done in the past. So he did a bet with Tony Fernandez, who's the CEO of AirAsia. And the loser of that bet had to dress up as a stewardess for the other airline. And so Richard Branson famously had to put on an AirAsia dress, lipstick, makeup, and serve AirAsia customers. So I knew he liked a bet. And so what I did was when I met him the next morning, rather than pitch him anything, I just talked about the game of the tennis. And I said, if we play this game of tennis, how about we have a little wager on the results? Now, I'm not going to go into that full story. That's for another time. But basically, that immediately got his interest. And so we ended up having a very fun conversation because it wasn't trying to get anything from him. And so I guess that would be my tip, is if you have a big ask of someone, try and build a relationship with them first before you go for the big ask. And when you do go for the big ask, always try and frame it in terms of what they will get out of it rather than what you will get out of it, because everyone you talk to is already thinking like, what's in this for me? And so that kind of needs to be the idea.